welcome back to Never Did It. I'm Brad Garoon. I'm here with Jake Ziegler. On Never Did It, we look back at the last 100 years plus of movie history in an effort to fill in some of our own movie blind spots. And this is season 2, Animation Boogaloo. And we are looking at the decade in animation of the aughts, from 2000 to 2009, with special guest Tom from Daddy Daughter Movie Night. Really excited to have you on. Been enjoying your channel for quite some time.
Thank you.
Trying to remember which episode. I think it was the Away episode was the first one that I saw, the Away video. And we are going to cover Away in our 2020s, or our 2010s episode of this show.
I'm not surprised, because that is one of the movies that suddenly I started getting some views. It's just this sleeper thing that led to, Ginzibilotus. Yeah. I sat here actually and I had to rehearse saying Ginzibilotus correctly before talking about him like 20 times. But interesting director. I don't want to send us off track, but that got me some traction. And I think a lot of people just are in love with him.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, Flow was obviously like a huge hit, and then Away, now I think more people will be able to see, because it's about to be on the Criterion disc for Flow.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and then hopefully it'll be on the Criterion channel as well.
I saw Away on Canopy, which I know I saw you talk about on your channel at least once.
Yeah, we're obsessed
which is
with
an awesome
Canopy.
thing. Once he hit, they took it off Canopy, but that's where I saw it.
Yeah, I think that was because Criterion got the streaming rights to Away and Flow. But yeah, Canopy, if you're an animation fan, it's the perfect, and have a library card. You got to have a library card.
Yeah.
But it's such a great service, because Deaf Crocodile and G Kids, so many great animation studios are putting their stuff up for free.
Oh, yeah. I troll G Kids just for ideas.
Well, let's start with G Kids then, because I think, this was my recommendation. I recommended that we watch Tokyo Godfathers, the third film from Satoshi Kon, who has since passed away, unfortunately. Perfect Blue, Millennium Actress, then Tokyo Godfathers, and Paprika, and then unfortunately he passed away from cancer. And he basically went 4 for 4 as far as feature films went, all good to great. And this is my favorite Satoshi Kon film. It's a loose remake of the John Ford film Three Godfathers, which I
didn't know that.
Yeah,
but I didn't know that either. I hadn't heard that.
Yep,
I'm writing that down as we speak.
The plot is only tangentially related. 3 guys find a baby. In Three Godfathers, we get more of them before the baby becomes part of the movie. And in this, we have 3 homeless folks in Tokyo, a young runaway girl, a trans woman, and a drunk older man, who have formed this little makeshift community. And they find a baby in the trash while they're looking for gifts for Christmas. And then what unfolds is this, what I thought was a wonderful Christmas story. Jake, I know you're a little allergic to Christmas movies. How did you feel about Tokyo Godfathers?
It didn't feel like a, Christmas movie at all. Just a movie that happened to be taking place during Christmas. There's so much more happening in the story and so many more surprises in it. I knew about this movie. I've known about it for a long time because I've talked about at length. I've talked about the Oscar list, and this was eligible for the Academy Award that year. Didn't get nominated somehow. It's a shame. So I had known about this movie for a long time, but I never really knew what it was about, because I purposely tried not to find out too much about movies before I see them, because I did see Millennium Actress, and I feel like my family video that I rented Millennium Actress from, then I think they got Tokyo Godfathers after that too, and I was like, oh cool, I'm going to rent that. But of course, Northern Michigan, they had 1 copy of it, and it was never in. And I think at some point what happened is somebody rented it and never returned it, and then they just never bothered to replace it. So I feel like I had intended to rent this for a long time, because I remember liking Millennium Actress. Years go by, and 800 billion movies come out every year, and it's hard to keep up. So, but yeah, this doesn't feel like any sort of Christmas movie. I had no adverse reaction to anything of that sort.
Tom, what did you think? Had you seen this before?
No, and I didn't. It's the only movie by the director that I've seen. So I have a couple of thoughts, but I'm actually interested to hear more about him. I kept thinking, I did a little segment on my channel about anime recently. Not about anime, but I did a few anime films in a row. I was not an anime person, so I'm sort of formulating what I think anime is. What makes a movie anime beyond being animation from Japan? Why is it distinct, except culturally, what topics it might cover or whatever? And I started to form an opinion about that. And then this movie kind of just exploded it.
How did it do that?
Completely. I'd been watching some Miyazaki, not a lot, 2 or 3 movies. Then Hosoda. I did 3 movies on Hosoda. And then I had seen Look Back, and I forget that director's name, but I loved it. But by and large, I had started to think that anime is special because you can do anything. Its superpower is you can just do anything, and you can tell stories in any way. And especially Miyazaki. But Hosoda, I've grown in fondness for. Most of the movies that I've been watching, you wouldn't make in live action. You wouldn't even try. Someone might try, but I wouldn't recommend trying.
People have tried and it's gone poorly most of the time.
There's a stage play of Totoro right now, and I'm very curious about it. Maybe you could do it on stage with some, great practical folks behind you.
Yeah, the Spirited Away had a very well received stage run that I think you can watch. I think it's been released on physical and streaming somewhere.
And that's actually one that's on my list and I haven't seen, much to my discredit. Everyone tells me watch Spirited Away next, and I never get to it. I mean, so there were very few movies that I had seen that were anime that didn't fit the bill for that perception. I think look back, you could tackle maybe live action.
Sure. Yeah. It's got a bit of a time alternate universe thing going, but it's very subtle.
Yeah. And it takes place in real locations for the most part, it's grounded. But Hosoda, and I know people have made The Girl Who Leapt Through Time live and TV series and everything that I haven't checked out and probably won't. So for the most part, I was thinking that must be what anime is. What makes it distinct from, American animation. Part of it is that we have a lot of tropes that we indulge in. The anime director feels free to do whatever. That's great. But then Tokyo Godfathers, I kept thinking this should be a live action movie. This could be a live action movie and a good one. And I kept thinking of Terry Gilliam and Robin Williams and The Fisher King for some reason. I was thinking they should have done this, They had the costumes. So I kept thinking, why did this have to be anime? And I liked the movie. I enjoyed watching it. I think another thing that stands out for me about the animes that I've seen are the depth of character they wring out of the drawings, out of the art. Blows my mind. And this is no exception. And a lot of the exaggerated, characterizations pull something out of these characters that maybe, if you didn't have a Robin Williams, you wouldn't get with a live actor. The depth of talent that goes into telling a story this way, I can see why they did it why they were drawn to it as an anime. That was my recurring thought. I was like, gee, I'd love to see this in a gritty sort of dark comedy.
We've talked about this a little bit on the show, movies that are animated, that the question of why. And it always makes me think of King of the Hill. There's nothing that happens on that show ever that couldn't happen in real life. It's a completely grounded show, with the exception of the way Hank's father is drawn, because he doesn't have legs below the shins, but he can walk. But Mike Judge was an animator at the time because he had done Beavis and Butthead, and that was his medium. And I think that's what happened here. Satoshi Kon is an animation director, and this was the story he was interested in, so it became animated as a result. And you see that a lot, not 100% of the time. There are certainly anime directors that have done live action. Mamoru Oshii, who directed Ghost in the Shell, has done live action movies, but it's pretty rare. I just really quick, I didn't know his name offhand either, but the director of Look Back is Kiyotaka Oshiyama. When I saw Look Back in the theater, Regal clearly didn't think that a 55-minute movie was enough of a pull to get people to buy a ticket. So there was an interview with him after the movie that they played on.
Oh, wow.
And he talked about wanting to make Look Back as realistic as possible. He didn't want to do exaggerated movements for the characters. There's a scene, I think one of the more famous scenes in that movie, for as famous as Look Back. I mean, Look Back didn't get a ton of eyeballs in the United States, but the three of us have seen it. And I think it was on the Oscar list also. Right? And Oscars there's the 5 movies that get nominated, but what Jake's talking about when he mentions the Oscar list is all of the movies that are eligible to be nominated for the Oscar. So it's usually a list of what, like 20, 30 movies?
Yeah, it's somewhere between from the first couple of years it was like 9 to like 14 or something, but now it's grown to it's between like 25 and like 32, give or take. Yeah.
And a lot of them are bad.
It explains some of the bile I was seeing online in my comments, because when I was talking about Ginsilba Lotus and doing some videos there, Look Back was cheated. Look Back, I was like, what is this movie that people are loving? I've never heard of it. And that's one of the reasons I went back and watched it.
That's so interesting. I would never have guessed that a movie like Look Back would get that kind of treatment. I mean, I really liked it, but Flow is such an immense achievement by an indie company.
I just love that he made it on his laptop, or he didn't make that one specifically only on his laptop.
Yeah.
He had a team of people, probably with very nice laptops, but just the sheer stick-to-itiveness to go from Away to that. And Away, once you know how he made Away, you're like, what's our excuse?
Right, yeah, totally. And it's very cool that those two movies mirror his process, that Away is about one guy trying to survive and Flow is about a group of animals collaborating. And then that's what
Yeah,
he
he
was
says
going
that in
to.
interviews, doesn't he? A lot.
Yeah.
But I want, how could that be though? Because how could you be making a movie about an experience you're sort of about to have?
In the middle of happening. He's got a lot of forethought.
There's a lot of pre-production and he's already in the soup by that point.
Sure. In our 1980s episode, we talked about Akira, another like really groundbreaking anime because it pretty much made anime popular in the West. When you mentioned pre-production, Katsuhiro Otomo storyboarded Akira to such a degree that there was no guesswork left by the time production rolled around. He had drawn such detail in his storyboards. Unlike, like you see, even like Scorsese does big storyboards for his action scenes, but because they're going to be in live action, what he draws is very rudimentary. What Otomo did was so detailed that it allowed his team to do more with less and be able to make this movie that really, I think, still hasn't been topped visually. Came out 40 years ago on a smaller budget because they only had $10 million to make what really was what would now cost $200 million to make an animation. It was also one of the first movies to utilize CGI. But anyway, back to Tokyo Godfathers. My favorite thing about this movie, and I think I like Satoshi Kon movies a lot. I think for me, the quick ranking is Tokyo Godfathers, Perfect Blue, Paprika, Millennium Actress.
I've only ever heard of Paprika, but that's not the next one I should watch.
No, so Perfect Blue is his most famous movie.
Okay.
And it was his first. Paprika is a lot of times compared to Inception, and people accuse Christopher Nolan of stealing the idea of Inception from Paprika. I actually don't think they're that similar, and I'm not even like the biggest Christopher Nolan defender in the world, but I think Christopher Nolan's super innocent in this one.
So Paprika was on my radar, but
put Perfect Blue on your radar. It's also it's more of a paranoid thriller, but it's very psychological. It's about a pop star's breakdown. But what I love about Tokyo Godfathers is it's a little bit more accessible than his other movies. Not that I think that makes a movie good, but in this case, I think it really did. And I love the way that every character, especially the three principal characters, but also the troubled would-be mother character, have really satisfying conclusions to their story. And you have these three characters who are wrapped up together when the movie starts, but they don't even realize how much their lives were always going to be wrapped up together based on how that night progresses. And I love those plot machinations, which I don't want to spoil too many of them in case folks haven't seen the movie, but that's what I loved the most about it.
Did you feel that there was a good balance in terms of these sorts of coincidences in the plot?
Who could I compare it to? It didn't feel like a Rian Johnson, I planted all these seeds so I could bloom these flowers in this order. It wasn't as like clean as that. And I'm a big Rian Johnson fan, but because of the magic at the end of the movie, because there was this like, this is fated and this story has a happy ending.
And it's Christmas.
And it's because it's Christmas. I thought it worked. I mean, as far as like Christmas tales go, it's pretty dark. What happened to these people to get them to this point is rough. So for them to have this catharsis, I think it's nice that all of these coincidences, dad is a cop. Oh, I'm spoiling it. I don't want to spoil it.
She says that halfway through the movie.
Right. Hana's employer is actually not as angry as we originally thought. All these things. The Jin's kids will forgive. I think that those are all important things for a Christmas movie. I do think if this was a live action movie, I might roll my eyes a little bit, but also because it's a cartoon, it worked for me.
We're spoiling things and we can talk about the ending a little bit too. I mean, I think the ending is also, I don't know how this would play into some of Satoshi Kon's other work, but I think it's explicitly making a case that, yep, there is a God, because like Hana says it over and over again, this God loves this baby, God loves this baby, God loves this baby, and then something miraculous happens at the end. It's like, I think that's very explicitly making the case that, yeah, this was an act of God.
Or at least like, it was a miracle. I don't know. I don't think you have to get too...
Yeah, but I think miracle implies the presence of God.
It's a Christmas movie, so it's probably...
I'm not butting up against it. It actually, right. And I think, like you said, in a live action movie, I would have been like, oh, but since they had kind of built up to this so much, and that was like Hana's belief, like God loves this baby, God's protecting this baby, even though this baby's going through something horrible for a baby to be going through, she, still keeps saying that God loves this baby, and I think, that they kind of bore that out at the end, and that's why it worked for me.
Doesn't one of the characters float down to the ground with the baby on the torn, which is kind of a practical trope, in live action movies, but it kind of fit in here. And you didn't roll your eyes. You kind of wanted it to happen because there was nothing left to happen. And
I certainly would have been upset if it didn't happen.
yeah, yeah.
I'm trying to think of other movies that are kind of like this. What I would recommend. You mentioned anime can do anything. One of the things I love in anime, and I talked about this a little bit in our 80s episode, because there is an old Isao Takahata movie called Ghost the Cellist. And Isao Takahata was Miyazaki's partner and mentor at Studio Ghibli. And Ghost the Cellist I love because it's a very focused movie about a guy who wants to be the country's greatest cellist. And one of the things I love in anime movies is when it's about someone trying to hone a specific skill. So like the first Slam Dunk it's based on an anime cartoon, but I haven't seen the series. I only saw the movie. And it's just about this team. The whole movie is one basketball game and about like what the team does and what they pulled from their past to win this basketball game. It's the most fun. Or this wasn't my favorite movie, but Blue Giant, all about these two guys trying to become a great jazz duo or trio. Or in that same vein, The Colors Within, which came out last year, about three kids who just want to form a really good band in their town. Or Angaku, Our Sound. Lots of movies about people who want to be in a great band. All these movies are very based in reality, but the medium, I think, helps infuse a kind of magic into their skills, the way they advance in their skills, that feels more fun than watching it in live action. Like you can have Whiplash, which is a real tough movie to get through about musical greatness, or Tar, or The Maestro. But The Colors Within, Angaku is like the funniest movie. This like silly, very simply drawn characters trying to make a great rock band. There's just something like kind of magic about it. And I think I wish American animation films, or even just Western in general movies, got a little bit more behind that. There are great, obviously, Western animated movies, but what you said about anime being able to do anything, this is something that they do really great and kind of plays into that Japanese culture of the Japanese artisan culture. There's more space for people to be, and this is diminishing in their culture, unfortunately, as it diminishes all over the world, but there's more space to be great at a very specific thing. But I'll get off I'm about to be like, but actually car culture is ruining it. Driving culture is ruining it because you can't walk anywhere to go to a shop. I won't get on my high horse about that.
Yeah, I mean, I said it in my review, and I think I said it, there's so many surprises in the way that the story goes, and they don't feel like surprises for the sake of surprises. You know, there's no like, hey, gotcha type stuff in it. Like everything that all the story beats makes sense. It's a really beautiful story. And we've talked about these kind of movies before on our podcast, so like these found family kind of movies. Like Brad, you called them like a makeshift community. I'd take it one step further. I'd say that this is a family. These three, they're a family, and the way they interact with each other is it's really beautiful. I mean, I honestly almost forgot it was like a Christmas movie until you guys mentioned that before, because that was just like such a non-factor in the movie for me at all. Just like it was just more about the three people and their closeness and their bond, and it was really like extraordinary. Actually, I was really kind of mesmerized by this movie.
In terms of it being a Christmas movie, I thought the only thing that I would say about it that hurt me getting into it, and I eventually got into it, was it seemed like such a Christmas movie. It starts with Christmas carols, then you have this nativity scene in the garbage pile, and I was like, whoa, this is a little on the nose. But you forget about it really quickly because the characters are so great.
All right, so let's segue. Tom, earlier you mentioned you like these psychological, internal, psychedelic films. Jake, you recommended that we watch Richard Linklater's A Waking Life. I actually meant to watch Slackers before this, and I forgot to. I'm mad at myself.
I did, but it's like a couple of weeks back, so my mind is a little fuzzy. Yeah, there are some things about Slackers that come to bear.
Yeah, that's what I had read. Jake, why did you recommend we watch A Waking Life?
Waking Life. Is there? Yeah,
I always do that. Why do I do that? Ugh. Okay, yeah, Waking Life.
It's very important we get this exactly right. But I mean, the main reason, more than anything, is it's a Richard Linklater film, and I know you like Richard Linklater, and that you've been trying to see finish off his filmography. I figured Linklater will always give us something interesting to talk about, and I don't know if I'd seen this movie maybe since it came out, and it came out in 2001. I do remember seeing it at the Little Theater. Brad and I went to the same college. The Little Theater over on East Campus at Western. I'm pretty sure they played it, and I'm almost positive that's where I saw it. Selfishly for myself, I hadn't seen it in a long time and was really looking to revisit it, especially with Linklater's got two good sounding movies coming out later this year that both may or may not end up being like Oscar contenders again. And regardless, he's Linklater, he's cool. I thought I knew you'd want to see it at some point, and I wanted to watch it again, so it seemed like a good one to put on down for the podcast.
And what is it about? If you can tell us what it's about.
That is hard to do. In fact, because my wife came home while I was like in the middle of it. I was like, "Oh, what's this?" I said, "It's Waking Life. It's a Linklater movie. What's it about?" I'm like, It's a Linklater movie. I don't know. Like it's tough because there's not like a real specific plot to it. It's just a lot of
There
I'm not even
is.
sure I can call it episodic because
There is.
episodes tend to have like even in movies when you have like anthology films or like episodic films, there's like a beginning, middle, and end, and even these don't particularly have that. It's a lot of like just coming into the middle of these like philosophical conversations between. Sometimes you have the one main character and he's involved in a lot of them, but sometimes he's not even in them. It's different. Moving through reality and dreams and lucid dreaming. There's kind of all this stuff wrapped up into it. So it's very non-plot driven and just more like kind of idea driven. I loved about it this time around, and I remembered loving it too. What I just loved about it this time around is like sometimes I'm listening to these conversations people are having. I'm like, oh, that's interesting, or that's insightful, or I think that's cool. And then sometimes I'm listening to these people talking like this is complete garbage, like pretentious, like not like what is this? But in that sense, like it's kind of perfect because when you get into all of these conversations and things like sometimes that's how it's going to come across, and sometimes it's going to come across better than that. It's like kind of walking around, a big college campus. You're going to walk by some people who are doing interesting things or saying interesting things, and sometimes you can walk by people like they're idiots who think they're smart, and that's I think the movie really captured that well, and I'm not sure if that was intentional or not, but that's how it came across to me, and that actually turned out to be a strength.
There's such a fine line between being pretentious and uncovering something that's perfect and artful. I think there's a progression, and I haven't seen a Linklater film probably since this film, and I need to catch up, and I'd love to hear more since obviously you've seen them all.
Well, good luck. There's 26 of them.
Well, maybe the major ones, whatever that means. But there's definitely a progression from Slacker to this movie, and they're separated by a lot of years. You have that drifting sort of anyone can be a character in Slacker, and it just goes from this group of people to that group of people. And I just so you see it. I ordered this on eBay so I could watch it because something about Waking Life just really connected back to Slacker for me. And it was that drifting, seemingly aimless progression through a town, through a city. And Slacker, I think, is Linklater trying to find a connection between what he wanted to do and tell these various stories without great import and just drift to the next guy, and having a plot where anyone can be a character, everyone is the character, and then moving into Waking Life where there is a character. The boy who gets into town in Waking Life, we find him on a train, and we do drift away from him a lot, but I think that's okay. He is, though, perhaps arguably, but for me, he's the main character. I actually think he's the little boy at the beginning of the film. It starts with them doing this, and I think that's called a dream catcher, actually, type of thing. And they open the little girl opens the flap and it says dream is destiny. And then the little boy starts to float. And then you cut to the main character on the train and he wakes up. That's what he does throughout the movie. He keeps waking up until you realize there's something odd going on here. And we're not sure if we're still in his dream or not. And he keeps waking up over and over. So you go from anyone can be a character to this one presence who's the audience proxy floating through these things. By the end of this movie, he drifts away. And you linger on this shot of him floating away. Sorry if that's a spoiler, but it's an old movie. And then the camera kind of sits there a little uncomfortably as he becomes a dot. And then you're the character. Then you're the only thing left watching this. And frankly, I started to wonder if he was a ghost. And he talks about this. He talks about not being able to wake up. And Linklater appears in the film in an animated version of himself, and he's the guy in the boat car. It's kind of like, and I'm getting off into the weeds, but I find it really fun. That's kind of like the ferryman. He's kind of going across the river Styx. I think he's newly dead.
Well, he certainly thinks so at one point, yeah.
Yeah. Linklater's character, who's just a random guy, tells the guy driving the boat car, you know what, go up here, make a right at the next light, go 3 blocks and let this guy off on the corner, or something to that effect. He's directing. He's a director, and he's appearing in the film, and he's telling another character to drop this guy off there, and that happens to be the scene where he dies. He crosses that street, and there's a piece of paper on the ground, and it says, look to your right, and he looks, and a car hits him. I thought it was fascinating that he is playing a director at the beginning of the film. Then he comes back at the end of the film and he's playing pinball, but he's not that character. He says, I don't know what you're talking about. I wasn't in any boat car. He starts talking about false awakenings, and turns out that he's sort of this character just like the characters that he's describing in the land of the dead. And maybe he's dead too. Tells him, well, it's simple. Just wake up if you want to wake up. If you can wake up, I think that's a good thing that you should do. And that's a director at work. We have formal design. He's at the beginning of the movie and he's at the end of the movie. At the beginning of the movie, what's the first thing we see? We see a bunch of musicians starting to rehearse for whatever their job is, playing music for. And then at the end of the movie, one of the last things the main character does is he goes into this tango dance studio and people are playing, and it's the same people. They're all dressed up now, but it's the same people. And they're playing the same instruments. They just happen to have, I don't think it could be different people. They happen to have an accordion and the same instruments. So how many accordions do you run into in a small town? He goes there and then he meets Richard Linklater, the director, who tells him, maybe it's time for you to wake up if you can. And then the diegetic music from this group suddenly becomes the soundtrack. And it's as if Linklater's coming in and saying, yes, there's a form in this movie, and I am making a movie, and there is a progression. Then the character floats away. And very directorially, the camera lingers, and you're watching this. The thought that passes is, am I in the land of it? Am I also a dreamer? Why am I watching all of this? He's drifted away because he's done his work. He's had whatever realization he needs to have, and he's no longer holding on to the ground. He lets himself float away, but I'm still down here, so I guess I have similar work to do. I thought it was very trippy and heady, but also sensible in a lot of ways. And I would just sort of back that up too, because centrally in the film, and actually I looked at the timer on the film while I was watching it, dead center in the film, there are two characters talking about the holy moment. They decide to have a holy moment and they look at each other and then they become clouds and they come back. And they're talking about the difficulties between acting in the world and connecting with other people. And then they talk about movies. And it turns out our main character is watching these two guys on a movie screen. He's in a theater watching these guys in a movie talking about the difference between movies and reality. And it's a centerpiece of the film, and they're dead center in the middle of the movie, and they're talking about this. Then they describe art and film as a series of holy moments, which are the scenes. And they even go so far as to describe art is capturing God in a holy moment and translating it as an artist. And then Linklater at the end of the film basically says the same thing. Everything is the same moment. And he goes into Gnosticism and stuff that's way over my head. He talks about it as a series of moments where we're saying, no, we don't want to join the ethereal yet. No, we still have things to do here on Earth. And then eventually everyone says yes, and they drift away. I just thought there was something really beautiful about it. And just like with Tokyo Godfathers, in a sense, it's not pretentious, almost because it's not slacker, because it's animated. So you're already set up to expect anything. You're already set up for the reality around these characters to transmute and become different things. So you're willing to accept more. And so you're open to whatever happens, including what happens in the story. I just love that. I love that. I thought it was interesting of him to take his whole shtick from slacker, take it into animation. Remembered liking it, but now I kind of love it.
I don't have a more thoughtful interpretation of the movie. I think that view of the plot, I hadn't thought about a lot of those things. I hadn't thought about it as a ghost story. I hadn't thought about it as the last moment before you die could be a lifetime, even though they explicitly say that in the film. Okay, so I have a few thoughts based on the structure of the movie. One is Linklater really pioneered something here that we've seen a few times since. This is essentially taking podcast conversations, like navel-gazy podcast conversations that don't need to connect necessarily outside of theme, and even some of them don't connect via theme, and animating over them to make something interesting. Pendleton Ward, who's the creator of Adventure Time, he and Duncan Trussell made a miniseries on Netflix called The Midnight Gospel. And what they did was they took, Trussell's really into like magical thinking and new age philosophy, and he has a podcast about it. And they took podcast conversations of his and animated over them to make a story of a guy going through essentially the land of the dead. But there's not much of a a through line through the episodes. And the only reason the main reason, I have to plug this a little bit, on my old podcast, Flooping the Pig, the Adventure Time podcast, we did an episode about the Midnight Gospel. So check that out if you can find it. But the thing that's really touching is there's an episode where Trussell interviews his mother, and she died really shortly after that. She had terminal cancer, and they have this amazing conversation about grieving before the death happens, and what to do with all those feelings. And it's one of the most powerful conversations I've ever seen in a television show or movie. And the fact that it's a real conversation that happened between Trussell and his mother brings a lot to it. But they animated this story over it, and the animation over it is Trussell's talking to his mother, and as he talks to her, she remains the same, but he ages because he's emotionally falling apart in front of her. And I felt that doesn't happen. We don't get that episode of that show without Waking Life. Here, Linklater has taken bits and pieces of conversations from non-actors that he thinks are interesting. These are mostly writers. Some of them are filmmakers or playwrights or things like that, but they're not talking, with a brief exception, they're not talking about the movies. And he animates over them in varying degrees of complexity. And what I thought was really interesting is when Kaved Zahedi and David Jewell are having that conversation that you mentioned about a holy moment. I'm actually watching that part on the bus on the way to work. On my phone. Get mad at me if you want. And while it's happening, I'm thinking, wow, the way that Linklater is showing Jewell and Zahedi pretty simply drawn, but then showing Wiley Wiggins, the main character, watching them, and he's quite detailed. There's a lot of layers to what he's saying about like the nature of reality and what might or might not be more tethered to reality in the film. And right as I'm thinking the word layered, Jewell says the word layered. And I was like, okay, I'm right where he wants me to be. He has put me exactly where he wants me, and brilliant thing for him to do. But those two things I thought were wild, because now it is, I wouldn't say commonplace, but it is an interesting experiment that others have done too, to take audio. You know who did it the best actually was Aardman, but they weren't even TV shows. They were like little clips. He went to the zoo and interviewed people about animals, and then he took that audio and animated animals over it, talking about each other. It's so funny that happened.
Did he do like real audio segments for SNL, or did someone just rip off that idea?
Oh, I don't know.
Because there was a segment back in the day called Fun with Real Audio or something, and it did a similar notion. I wonder if it was just actually Aardman.
But even before that, I mean, you can watch, there's a John Hughley film from 1976 called Everybody Rides the Carousel, which you can watch on the Criterion Channel, which is like a life cycle movie. It's about emotions pulling at you at different stages of your life. And I believe that all of the audio for that movie was recorded for the film, but it doesn't feel like it. They feel like real conversations being had by little kids with each other, or parents with their kids, and then young people arguing about whether or not to have a new child, things like that. And I wouldn't be surprised if Linklater was a little bit influenced by Hughley's work, especially because Hughley had been nominated for an Academy Award for some of his short films, and it was all animated. But that was something really cool that I didn't know Waking Life was going to be before I started watching it. And I'd seen A Scanner Darkly, Linklater's second roto animation movie.
Oh, I saw that too, but I forgot about it.
It's different than this, and I thought it was going to be the same, but that's more plot driven. And then he has a third one called Apollo 10.5 that came out 2 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know that one.
3 years ago,
like 2020.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. And that's like Jack Black narrating a movie about it's basically about Linklater's fascination with the space program growing up in Texas.
I'm sorry, I lied. It was 2022.
Yeah, telling me I'm wrong.
I have my list pulled up. I have the Oscar list right in front of me, so I know each year that each movie was eligible.
So Linklater, it's cool that he's done these 3 different things with this medium. I think this is the best one by kind of a lot.
Does he do anything sort of transformative with animation after this? Like something that's you've never seen before? Or is it just animated because it can be?
A Scanner Darkly is animated because
that's interesting. I do remember that.
Right?
He does, yeah. But how about Apollo 10.5?
No, Apollo 10.5 I think is animated because it's, I don't know, Jake, what do you think? Why do you think he animated Apollo 10.5?
I think it was just because it was of the way the story was, because it was a story about him growing up, rather than like maybe do it in black and white. Like there's, to have like a different visual representation of that. And I don't know, that's a really good question, because that one, like you said, certainly didn't need to be, other than, maybe some of, the space effects, whatever, would have been easier to do.
Rotoscoped.
Yeah, rotoscoped that way. But I'm not sure why he did. I think that'd be interesting to find out.
But that's the other interesting question too, is because they're all rotoscoped, that means he filmed in real life all of these films.
Right.
The animation is an extra step, a stylistic choice, and a functional, structural choice.
I think the animation plays into the theme, like kind of it being a totally different time and totally different place type of thing for him. Yeah. And that would be my best guess.
We've talked about how Linklater We wish he would play with form a little more. We reviewed in our first season his movie Me and Orson Welles, which is a cute movie starring Zac Efron about a fictional person's interaction with Welles when he was still running his theater troupe. It's clearly filmed as if it should be in black and white, but it's not in black and white. And we think that was a studio choice, but no way to know. Linklater's never talked about it.
That's a Linklater movie? I might have seen that because it rings a bell.
Yeah, we liked it.
I went through a phase where I was big on Wells and was trying to consume everything I could, including reading these 2 big tomes of his life. But I'm not sure I saw that.
Just early, I remember early on, I texted you like, "Oh man, this movie's gonna trigger my Meniere's real bad because it's so wobbly and shaky and stuff." And it turned out not to be so bad. Some of the segments were a little worse than others, but I'm really glad we went and revisited this movie. I think it's really interesting to look at. It's very different than a lot of the other animated movies. And one final thing about the Oscars too is that I thought this was the best animated movie of 2001, but it did not get nominated at the Oscars. It was the first year of the category, and there was only 3 nominees, and it was Shrek, which was the winner, which I understand. It's not my favorite, but I mean, it was a huge deal. Monsters Inc. was another nominee, which is like, again, no argument there. Monsters Inc. is great. And the third nominee was Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius, which is fine. Yeah, no, Waking Life didn't get in. Yeah, because there were so many few. I think there was only like 9 eligible films that year, so they all ended up. Then they have to hit. There's like bylaws and stuff. They have to hit a certain number before it triggers 5 nominees. I think it's like 15 or something.
And Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius was, for its time, a massive hit. It cost $30 million to make and earned $100 million. And Waking Life cost $2 million to make and earned $3 million. Yeah. So the Oscars is not immune to rewarding things with nominations because they are successful, especially now, because the industry is not very successful anymore.
Yeah, you need people to tune in.
Yeah, totally.
Was it written to any degree, or did he really just contact, different people that he was interested in and say, talk about this for 10 minutes?
I don't know.
How was it produced? It seems like it's heading somewhere sometimes, and I find it hard to believe that he found a thread in post-production.
Everyone in it is truly in it. It's not like he has archive audio of anyone. He filmed everyone, but I don't know what the script for this movie looked like. In fact, I would guess that with the exception of maybe, we didn't mention this even, but this is in the Before trilogy, it is Before Sunrise 1.5, because there's a scene between Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy reprising their characters from Before Sunrise, which actually has to be non-canonical given what happens in Before Sunset, unless it takes place after Before Sunset. The other thing is, and I forgot to mention this, or it's just one of their dreams, because the one thing that's very cool about this using dream logic is most of these vignettes they start in the middle. One of you mentioned that, just like your dreams do. Your dreams don't start in the beginning. You just are sort of in them when you're in them. Mm-hmm. I tried having a lucid dream last night because I was very upset that I couldn't convince myself it was a dream.
Well, the Before connection was one of the other reasons I mean, obviously the Linklater connection was strong too, but I know you love the Before movies, and I knew that they had a little segment in there, and I wanted
I'd seen that before. I'd seen that clip. Okay, cool. Let's dive into our top 10s of the year, or of the decade even. Before we get to our favorite features though, first we're going to talk about our favorite animated shorts of the 2000s, of the aughts, of the zeros. So a couple weeks ago, Jake, you mentioned a TV thing that you weren't sure if it counted. It was the Simpsons Christmas special. I have 2 things here that I think prove it does count. So I got your back. First is something that doesn't count for this decade, for me, Wallace and Gromit's Cracking Contraptions, because this was a TV series, or a series of shorts that Letterboxd calls a short film only because it doesn't know how to break up the full runtime of the series. Really good, doesn't count. My number 10.
Agree.
My number 10. Great. My number 10 is Susie Templeton's Peter and the Wolf, a stop motion animated version of that story, which has been made again and again and again in animation. But this is maybe my favorite version of it. My number 9 is Father and Daughter by Michael Dudok de Wit. This one's a bummer. There's a sort of like suggestion in it that climate change is still a problem, even in the far future, even in a future that's like been taken over by bikes. I don't want to believe that would be the case. My number 8 is Adam Elliott's Harvey Crumpet. Adam Elliott gave us Memoir of a Snail and Mary and Max. He also gave us Harvey Crumpet. That was his first. My number 7 is Bernie, the Pixar short by Angus MacLean and spinoff from WALL-E. My number 6 is Rejected by Don Hertzfeld, which is very bloody and very funny. My number 5 is Tatsuo Sato's Cat Soup. This was directed by Sato and written by Masaki Yuasa, which is how I came to watch it, and has like major Masaki Yuasa vibes, major Adventure Time vibes, which is a big part of the reason I love it. Stick a pin in that while I talk about my number 4, Nick Park's A Matter of Loaf and Death, the Wallace and Gromit short, very funny. My number 3 is the Adventure Time pilot. Not pilot, concept This never aired on television, or maybe it did, but it's not canonically part of Adventure Time. It's its own thing, but very important and significant for me because it is the birthplace of Adventure Time by Pendleton Ward. My number 2 is Ryan, Chris Landreth's Ryan, about Ryan Larkin and his sort of descent into addiction. It's a conversation between the two of them. It's really good. Kind of hard to watch, especially if you have problems like me with the Uncanny Valley, because Larkin is shown in sort of like as like a half person, a decaying person with like faces inside his face. It's very odd, but very good. And my number 1 is Le Maison and Petit Cube, The House of Small Cubes. This is a Japanese movie by Kunio Kato, narrated by Masami Nagasawa, but it looks like French animation and has a French title, obviously. Just beautiful, interesting, sad.
Yeah, that's great. I've seen a lot from this decade too, because I started getting into the Oscar list at this time. So a couple of yours that you mentioned that would be honorable mentions for me. I somehow missed Ryan from my list entirely, even though I gave it 4.5 stars. But I'm looking at my list and I somehow missed that one entirely. So I'm just going to throw it in as an honorable mention in there. But then I also had seen Peter and the Wolf was an honorable mention for me. There's a lot of really, really good animated shorts from this decade. The House of Small Cubes, that's the one. That was my number 10 before I realized I had a documentary that I wanted to slot in the list. So House of Small Cubes I really like as well. My number 10 then is Wallace and Gromit, Matter of Loaf and Death. Like I said, Wallace and Gromit can do no wrong. My number 9 and 8 is I have a couple of Pixar shorts that I don't think other people like as much as I do, and maybe I need to watch them again. But at the time I rated them both so highly. My number 9 I have is an Up spinoff called George and AJ. And then my number 8 is Your Friend the Rat from Ratatouille, which I might enjoy more than Ratatouille, which I like quite a bit. But Your Friend the Rat I find to be very enjoyable as a short. My number 7 is an animated documentary called I Met the Walrus, directed by Josh Raskin. It's an interview that John Lennon had done with a 14-year-old kid in 1969. So there's some really interesting stuff in there, and it's only 5 minutes long. My number 6 is a film called The Moon and the Sun, an Imagined Conversation. It's about father-son stuff, and it's, this filmmaker kind of wrestling with his own relationship with his father. Number 5 is a film called Birthday Boy. This is by Sejong Park. It takes place during the Korean War about a boy who, gets a package on his birthday. Very, very cool. Number 4 is one, I'm not sure I think you would have seen it because it won the Oscar, Logorama. I like Logorama. It's stupid, but it's a lot of fun.
You said it right. I like Logorama. It's stupid.
Yeah, it is, but it's...
Actually, if you like Logorama, there's a movie you really need to see called Hello Dankness, which is an experimental art film. You can't stream it anywhere. You can't watch it anywhere. You can't buy a DVD because it's made entirely of clips of other movies, reconstituted to tell the story of the Trump administration through COVID. It's very cool, and sad you can't see it. And now I will tell you, I have a link. I will forward it to you.
Okay. Cool. I will watch that.
But it's a great, if anyone in any way can find the movie Hello Dankness, if you liked Logorama, Hello Dankness is a cool accompaniment.
Right on. Brings us up to number 3. Yes, Harvey Crumpet by, what's his name? Adam Elliott. Great. Number 2, I have Don Hertzfeldt's Rejected, which is just wild stuff. And then my number 1 was a film also on your list is Father and Daughter, which I think is just wonderful.
Great. And now on to our favorite feature films of the 2000s. I'll go first. I have a very strong top 10, and then I have a ton. Actually, the only thing that was really difficult for me for this list, I had so many 4-star movies, and I had 9 movies at 4.5 or 5. So figuring out which one 4-star movie would make it into the top 10 was a little bit of a challenge, but I'll just real quick go through my honorable mentions. South Park Imagination Land, which I'm counting because it has been released on physical media as a movie. It's 3 episodes of the show, but it's one story. It's very, very funny. Ari Folman's Waltz with Bashir, which is a sort of documentary and was nominated for Best International Film, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, just international, not animated. Again, that was a three nominee year.
Only the movie Flea, I think, has been nominated for. Sylvain Chomet's The Triplets of Belleville. He's got a new movie coming out this year. Very exciting.
Is there a date for that yet? I hadn't seen a date for it yet.
I don't think so.
Oh, okay, cool.
If it is, it's
out this year.
Yeah, if it is, it's the end of the year. If not, it'll be early next year.
Yeah.
Probably. Yoshiaki Kawajiri's Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, which is a sequel to a movie from the 80s that is not very good, but the sequel is very good. Takeshi Koiki's Redline. In our 1980s episode, I called this Red Zone. I'm sorry, it's called Redline. This movie's bonkers. It is one of the most visually interesting movies you'll ever see. I still don't think I understand the plot at all, but the way it looks is incredible. It's about race car driving. Linklater's Waking Life is in my honorable mentions. Adam Elliott's feature debut, Marion Max, is in my honorable mentions. Persepolis, one of the very few predominantly black and white modern animated films is an honorable mention. From Iran, this movie's incredible. Wallace and Gromit, Curse of the Were-Rabbit is in my honorable mentions. That was really hard not to put in my top 10. The only Disney movie I think that is on this list, The Emperor's New Groove, that was pretty hard not to put in my top 10. That was directed by Mark Dindal, who also directed the Garfield movie and Chicken Little. So minus points for those two pieces of crap. Miyazaki's Ponyo is an honorable mention. Monsters, Inc. is an honorable mention. The Fantastic Mr. Fox is an honorable mention. And Genius Party, which is actually probably should be in my top 10, but it's an anthology film. The shorts in it are incredible, but it's not super cohesive. And then my top 10, I mentioned this guy in my 1980s list, but Jiri Barta, who did Pied Piper in the 1980s, his second film in 2009, Toys in the Attic, about exactly what it sounds like. It's about a bunch of toys in the attic. One of the toys gets kidnapped by another toy. This is like Toy Story for sickos. It's a dark gothic stop motion animated movie. In the English dub, which is all I've seen, Forrest Whitaker does one of the voices. It's very good. And Joan Cusack is also very good as a Yiddish rat. She's very funny. Up, Pete Docter's Up from Pixar. Incredible movie. Everyone's seen it. I don't think I need to talk too much about it. That's my number 9. Tokyo Godfathers is my number 8. The Incredibles by Brad Bird is my number 7. The best Fantastic Four film. Even now that the new Fantastic Four movie comes out, still comfortably The Incredibles is the best Fantastic Four film. Howl's Moving Castle from Hayao Miyazaki is my number 6. I think this is maybe Miyazaki's most underrated movie. We saw this together at the Little Theater in Kalamazoo.
And for whatever reason, I have it at 3.5 stars. Which it seems a little low for me now, but I need to rewatch it and reevaluate.
Yeah, that does prove my point that it is criminally underrated.
There you go. Yep.
My number 5 is Masaki Uesa's Mind Game. This is the craziest movie maybe that's ever been made. It begins with a guy being attacked by gangsters and getting shot up the butt by a gun. God telling him he's not ready for heaven. God is a goldfish. Tells him he's not ready to be in heaven, sends him back, and then it becomes basically Jonah and the whale. They get swallowed up by a whale, or maybe it's Pinocchio even. I don't know. The animation in this is crazy. This is such a strong decade that this movie is my number 5. My number 4 is Finding Nemo from Andrew Stanton, who has one of the great animators. He has another movie on my list coming up. Also the director of John Carter, which was unfortunate for Disney. And I've heard someone call John Carter like one of the most consequential movies since 2000 because its failure made movie studios scared to make original films because it bombed so spectacularly. Which is too bad because Finding Nemo is great. My number 3 is Mark Osborne and John Stevenson's Kung Fu Panda, one of my favorite action movies, period. Animated or not. I think it's a perfect action film. Jack Black and Dustin Hoffman are a great student-teacher combo, and all the other voice actors in it do a great job too, and it's so star-studded. And of course, Ian McShane is a villain. You can't go wrong. My number 2, hope no one gets mad at this once they hear my number 1, but my number 2 is Miyazaki's Spirited Away, his masterpiece, and one of the greatest fantasy films of all time. Tom, you absolutely need to see this movie.
Yeah, on my list.
And then number 1, Andrew Stanton's back with WALL-E. If I had to rank, it's in my top 5 favorite animated films of all time. Got the Criterion of it recently. Really exciting.
WALL-E, you said?
WALL-E, yeah. Number 1 for me will always be Pinocchio, but WALL-E's up there. What did I say the other day was my number 2?
I thought maybe it might have been WALL-E.
Maybe it's WALL-E. Yeah, I probably was saying it was WALL-E. Yeah, I love this movie. It holds up every time I think maybe the people in wheelchairs floating around of it all is going to dampen my enjoyment. I watched it again. I'm like, no, this movie's still super sweet. It also calls back to another one of my favorite movies, Hello, Dolly. Walter Matthau is in WALL-E. And people don't realize that. And Barbara Streisand.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so that's my list. Where are you at, Jake?
All right. I'll hit a couple of my honorable mentions as well. A lot of them, this is going to be a lot of familiar territory on our list, but I also had Waltz with Bashir as one of my honorable mentions. I've got Wallace and Gromit, Curse of the Were-Rabbit, which was also tough to leave off my top 10. Mind Game didn't even make my top 10, and I loved it too. Triplets of Belleville, the Chicken Run. Yeah, that was 2000. Yep. So Chicken Run is in the honorable mentions.
Chicken Run. Oh
yeah.
My God. I thought you were saying Chicken Little.
No.
What are you doing?
No, Chicken Run.
Yes, Chicken Run. Fine. That's a Mel Gibson shout out for you.
I don't love that, but Chicken Run's still pretty fun. Fantastic Mr. Fox is an honorable mention, which my wife yelled at me about this morning when I showed her my list.
You can tell her it's an honorable mention for me also. So
all right, I will. She does hold your opinion in value. A Town Called Panic, which Brad, I know you saw.
Movie. How did I not leave that? Oh
yeah,
man,
I was gonna say, I know you saw that pretty recently and liked it.
That was like 4 or 5 years ago already at this point, but I really like A Town Called Panic. That's a wacky movie.
That is a wild movie. I saw it twice in a week, I think, because it came out when I was working in Omaha at that art theater, and I was like, the first time I saw it, I was like, this is wild. So I just went and saw it again while it was there. It was very cool.
Tom, it's made. I don't know if you've seen it or heard of it, but it's a movie made with toys, essentially, like real. It's stop motion animated, but it looks like Robot Chicken, kind of, but it's more deranged than Robot Chicken.
Okay, I'm writing it down.
Coraline is in my honorable mentions. Mary and Max, as you mentioned earlier, Ponyo, Shrek, and Shrek 2. I enjoy them still. I saw them a lot when my kid was little. I think they have their place. Ratatouille is in my honorable mentions. I know that is higher on a lot of people's Pixar lists. And then one movie I was surprised to see that I had 4 stars for, but then when I looked back, I was like, you know what? When I watched this with my kid when she was little, really enjoyed this. It's Mickey's House of Villains. It's one of those like Disney, like compilations, a bunch of the villains, come together. I think they'll get like snowed in. When I gave it 4 stars last time I watched it, and I was like, yep, I remember that being pretty enjoyable. Those were my honorable mentions. Now, if I get into the top 10, a lot of great stuff here. This was a really good decade. My number 10 is Waking Life, which we talked about quite a bit. Number 9 is one, Brad, you mentioned, Persepolis, which I'm due for a rewatch. Haven't seen that in a long time. Number 8, I've got Pixar's Monsters, Inc. Just so much fun. Holds up really, really, really well. Number 7, we've got Tokyo Godfathers, which again, I really, really like. Thank you, Brad, for recommending that. I'm glad I finally am able to cross that off my list and that I enjoyed it so much. Number 6, I've got Kung Fu Panda, which, is awesome. It's the role Jack Black was born to play. I mean, look at the design of that character and tell me anybody else could possibly be that voice. Just can't do it.
It's really funny you say that because I was thinking about Shrek the other day and how it was designed for Chris Farley. And now when I watch it, I'm like, yeah, it still feels like it should have been Chris Farley. I mean, obviously it couldn't have been. And they changed the design when they changed it to Mike Myers, and I don't think they changed it enough.
No, it still looks like Farley. And I think he recorded a bunch of dialogue for it before
the whole movie.
Yeah.
He recorded the whole film, but there was just there were some things that weren't quite finished, so they moved on. And also he wouldn't have been able to do any sequels, so.
Right. Yeah, they would have had to replace him at that point. Yeah. Boy, my top 5 is pretty it's real Pixar heavy, but you know what? This is like peak Pixar decade, really. Like, I mean, so I think this is fair. Number 5, I do have Up, which, Brad, you mentioned before, is just wonderful. My in-laws' dog is so Doug. I know a lot of everyone's like, my dog is Doug, but like, that's how we feel about our in-laws' dog, too. I mean, Doug is just one of the all-time great characters. Number 4 is Andrew Stanton's Finding Nemo, which, is incredible, holds up every single time. Number 3, the best Fantastic Four movie, The Incredibles. Yeah, this movie rules. Number 2, also hopefully not controversial, but I have Spirited Away also in my number 2. And I looked on Vudu briefly, or Fandango at home, whatever, and there are 2 versions of the stage play Spirited Away with different actresses playing Chihiro that are available to rent or purchase on that platform. So if they're not somewhere else, I mean, they're at least there. And then now that I've built up the suspense, number 1 is WALL-E. I mean, I don't know how it could be anything else. WALL-E is, to me, just the perfect movie.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Good. I remember everyone was abuzz about the first, what was it, like 10 or 15 minutes is in silence, right?
It's almost, I want to say it's almost a half hour, but I think that's just wishful thinking. It probably is closer to 15 minutes. But yeah, it's just WALL-E on on Earth, desolated, and then even getting into space. It's there are some dialogue with the other robot, but it's just one word over and over again.
Eva.
Yeah, it's incredible. Pixar really was. I liked Elio quite a bit. That just came out. It's a cute movie.
I haven't seen it. I'm kind of limited in terms of animation to what my daughter will watch.
Well, I think she would like Elio. It's a cute movie. How old's your daughter now?
10.
Yeah, that's a perfect age to watch this movie, actually.
Okay.
They're just not taking chances the way they used to take chances, like doing the first 10 minutes of Up, this devastating story about a relationship from childhood to death, or the first 15 minutes of WALL-E, which is a silent musical, or the first 5 minutes of Finding Nemo, which is a horror movie, or the first 5 minutes of Incredibles, like the movies that we have highest on this list, the first 5 minutes of The Incredibles, which is like archive footage that is very much like the golden age of comic books and old like Superman serials. They're not doing anything like that anymore. They are taking, I'm very curious what Hopper will be. Because Pixar, I would have to say, even with like a solid outing in Elio, they are in a slump.
Like the craftsmanship is obviously there. Like, like Elio is great. Inside Out was good. I know I liked a little more than Inside Out 2. I thought was pretty good. But yeah, it's just their stuff's just not transcendently great anymore. Like, like when you remember seeing WALL-E for the first time, or like you saw Up for the first time, or even out of this decade and you saw that first Inside Out for the first time, you're like, wow, this is something like really incredible and like really different and really unique and special. And now like you see Inside Out 2 where you see Elio, you're like, yeah, that was good. I liked that. That was just very enjoyable. But yeah, they're just not like they're not hitting those highs
Totally.
that they used to hit anymore. And
Mhm.
when you get to those highs, it can be really hard to stay there. I mean, you're making some of the greatest films of all time, not just animated or otherwise, and you're bound to have a drop off at some point.
Right.
Yeah.
They got there with Soul, I think.
Soul's incredible. Yeah.
And it's a shame that Soul wasn't initially released in theaters because of the pandemic. It has since been released in theaters, but didn't do that well on its re-release. But Soul is incredible. And Soul is doing a lot of, like, I had a little panic attack watching Soul, thinking about existence.
Mhm.
And I didn't have a panic attack watching Helio, I'll tell you that. Tom, before we go, let folks know about Daddy Daughter Movie Night.
Daddy Daughter Movie Night's my YouTube channel here. Started when my daughter was about 3. I had this idea. I was working in a visual effects company at the time in Berkeley, California, and had a kid. And, it kind of, as I said at the beginning of the conversation, kind of pulled me out of being able to do a lot of, creative things because you have a kid and that comes first. So I said, well, let me do a YouTube channel, because of course my kid will be into movies the way I am. Eventually, as she grows up, we'll both talk together about movies, and she'll be part of the channel. She's a video game kid. She almost has no use for what I'm doing. But the name I kept because I still started out talking about movies that you could watch with your little girl or little boy growing up, and started to get a little bit of a following with parents, largely. And then I branched out into a segment called Dad After Dark, where I'll talk about any movies that I like. It gave me a little more freedom. So that's it. It's my movie review channel here on YouTube, and people can check it out if they like.
I will vouch for it very strongly. As soon as I saw it, I was like, I got to get Tom on the show. I want to talk to him about movies so badly. Love the way you talk so thoughtfully about the movies that you review. It's a great channel.
I'd love to send people over here because I think what you guys are doing is so ambitious, and I don't have the mind for it. I never had the mind for it, let's be honest. But even at my peak, the encyclopedic ambition that you're doing on this channel to cover 100 years of movies, and I understand you're doing it out of love for the movies, but I would never it wouldn't cross my mind to undertake it. And I'm just in awe of the depths that you go to in your episodes. So thank you for this. It's a resource, and it's going to stay a resource for people.
Well, really appreciate that. As you can see now, we're smoke and mirrors. Okay, cool. We'll be back next week with our penultimate episode of this mini-series, the 2010s, or as Jake likes to say, the 20-teens, because he doesn't care what happened in 2010, 2011, or 2012.